On December 8, 2004, the Al Rosa Villa nightclub in Columbus, Ohio, was packed with 250 fans waiting for Damageplan to take the stage. The venue was a modest club with a low ceiling, dim lighting, and a small stage barely elevated above the crowd. Dimebag Darrell Abbott, the 38-year-old guitarist who had revolutionized heavy metal with Pantera, stood in the wings tuning his signature Dean guitar. He wore his trademark goatee and baseball cap, relaxed and joking with his brother Vinnie Paul on drums. This was supposed to be just another show on a routine tour. At 10:18 p.m., the band launched into their opening song. Darrell stepped to the front of the stage, his fingers moving across the fretboard with the precision that had made him a legend. The crowd surged forward, head banging in unison. 30 seconds into the first song, a man in a hockey jersey pushed his way through the audience. His name was Nathan Gale, a 25-year-old former Marine with untreated schizophrenia. He had driven 3 hours to Columbus with a single purpose. Gale climbed onto the stage. Security assumed he was an overeager fan attempting stage diving. Before anyone could react, he pulled a Beretta 9mm pistol from his jacket. The first shot hit Dimebag Darrell in the head at point-blank range. The guitarist collapsed instantly, his body falling backward onto the stage floor. His guitar crashed beside him, feedback screaming through the amplifiers. The music stopped. For a split second, the crowd thought it was part of the show. Then the screaming started. Gale fired again, shooting Darrell twice more in the chest as he lay motionless. Blood pooled rapidly beneath the guitarist's body. Vinnie Paul dove behind his drum kit. Fans scattered in every direction, trampling each other to reach the exits. Gale turned his weapon on anyone who moved. He shot Nathan Bray, a 23-year-old fan who tried to help Darrell, killing him instantly. He shot Jeff Thompson, the head of security, 3 times in the chest. He shot Aaron Hawk, a club employee who attempted to pull Darrell's body to safety. Within 90 seconds, Gale had fired 15 rounds. 4 people lay dead or dying on the stage. The gunman grabbed a hostage and held the pistol to his head, using him as a shield. Police arrived within 4 minutes. Officer James Niggemeyer entered through a back door, moving silently through the chaos. He found Gale on the stage, still holding his hostage, the gun pressed against the man's temple. Niggemeyer raised his shotgun and fired a single blast. The buckshot struck Gale in the face, killing him instantly. His body dropped to the stage floor beside Dimebag Darrell's corpse. Paramedics rushed to Darrell's side, but there was nothing they could do. The first bullet had entered his skull, just above his left ear, destroying his brainstem. He had died within seconds of being shot. The man who had created some of metal's most aggressive and technically brilliant guitar work was gone at 38, murdered on stage in front of his fans by a stranger who believed the lyrics to Pantera songs were personal messages directed at him. On September 27, 1986, the tour bus carrying Metallica rolled through the darkness of southern Sweden. The band was traveling overnight from Stockholm to Copenhagen, their next stop on a European tour supporting their Master of Puppets album. Cliff Burton, the 24-year-old bassist, had won a card game earlier that evening. His prize was the choice of sleeping bunks on the bus. He selected the bunk that Kirk Hammett, the guitarist, usually occupied. It was near the front of the bus, considered the most comfortable spot. At 6:30 a.m., the bus was traveling along Route 4 near the small town of Ljungby. The road was narrow, flanked by dense forest on both sides. The driver later reported that the bus hit a patch of black ice, an invisible layer of frozen moisture on the asphalt. The vehicle began to skid. The driver attempted to correct the slide, but the bus was moving too fast. It veered off the road, tilting violently to the right. Cliff Burton was asleep in his bunk when the bus left the pavement. The vehicle rolled completely over, rotating 180 degrees. The impact threw Burton from his bunk through the window beside him. His body was ejected onto the road. Before anyone inside could react, the bus completed its roll and came down directly on top of him. The full weight of the vehicle, approximately 20 tons, crushed his chest and abdomen. The other band members were thrown violently inside the bus, but survived with minor injuries. When the vehicle finally stopped moving, they climbed out through shattered windows. James Hetfield, the singer, immediately began searching for Burton. He found him beneath the bus, his body pinned under the chassis. Hetfield and the others tried desperately to lift the vehicle, but it was impossible. They screamed for help, but the road was deserted. A crane was required to lift the bus. By the time emergency services arrived 40 minutes later, Cliff Burton had been dead for over half an hour. The crushing force had caused massive internal hemorrhaging. His ribs were shattered, his lungs collapsed, and his heart had stopped almost immediately. The medical examiner later confirmed that even if help had arrived instantly, the injuries were unsurvivable. Metallica's bassist, the classically trained musician who had brought complexity and melody to thrash metal, died on a frozen Swedish road because of a card game and a patch of ice. On March 19, 1982, a small Beechcraft Bonanza aircraft took off from Knoxville, Tennessee. Randy Rhoads, the 25-year-old guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne's band, was a passenger along with the band's makeup artist Rachel Youngblood and the pilot Andrew Aycock. The plane belonged to the bus driver for Ozzy's tour. Aycock had offered to take band members on short flights during their day off. The tour bus was parked at a property in Leesburg, Florida, where the band was staying between shows. Ozzy Osbourne was asleep on the bus, recovering from the previous night's performance and heavy drinking. Rhoads had been reluctant to fly. He had expressed concerns about Aycock's experience and the small size of the aircraft, but Aycock was insistent, and Rhoads finally agreed to a brief flight. At 9:00 a.m., the plane lifted off from a small airstrip near the property. For the first few minutes, the flight was routine. Then Aycock began flying erratically. He descended to extremely low altitude, barely clearing the treetops. Witnesses on the ground reported seeing the plane flying dangerously close to the tour bus. Aycock made a pass directly over the vehicle, so low that the landing gear nearly touched the roof. Inside the bus, the sound woke several band members. Ozzy stumbled to a window and saw the plane banking sharply for another pass. Aycock brought the aircraft around again, even lower this time. He was attempting to buzz the bus, a reckless stunt meant to frighten the people inside. As the plane approached, its left wing clipped the bus's roof. The impact was catastrophic. The wing sheared off instantly. The plane spun violently out of control, tumbling through the air. It crashed into a nearby mansion, smashing through the roof and exploding on impact. The fireball was visible for miles. Ozzy and the other band members ran toward the burning wreckage. Flames consumed the aircraft completely. The heat was so intense they couldn't get within 50 feet. Emergency services arrived within minutes, but there was nothing to save. all 3 people on board were killed instantly. Randy Rhoads' body was burned beyond recognition. Dental records were required for identification. The guitarist, who had redefined heavy metal guitar with his classical influences and technical precision, was dead at 25, killed by a pilot's reckless decision to show off. On December 28, 2015, Lemmy Kilmister sat in his small apartment in Los Angeles, 2 days after his 70th birthday. The founder and bassist of Motorhead had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer just 2 days earlier. For months, he had ignored the symptoms: the persistent cough, the weight loss, the exhaustion that made it difficult to stand for entire concerts. He had continued touring, drinking his signature Jack Daniels and Coke, smoking cigarettes, and playing bass with the same relentless intensity he had maintained for 4 decades. On December 26th, his birthday, Lemmy had finally agreed to see a doctor. The diagnosis was immediate and devastating: prostate cancer that had metastasized to his brain and neck. The oncologist gave him weeks to live, possibly days. Lemmy refused hospitalization. He returned to his apartment, a small 2-room space filled with Nazi memorabilia, video games, and decades of rock and roll history. He spent his final 2 days playing video games and receiving visits from close friends. His body was shutting down rapidly. The cancer had spread so aggressively that his organs were failing in sequence. His kidneys stopped processing waste. His liver, damaged by decades of alcohol consumption, could no longer filter toxins from his blood. Fluid accumulated in his lungs, making each breath a struggle. On the morning of December 28th, Lemmy's assistant found him unresponsive in his recliner. Paramedics were called, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The official cause of death was listed as prostate cancer, cardiac arrhythmia, and congestive heart failure. His body had simply given out after 70 years of relentless abuse and the final assault of aggressive cancer. The man who had sung "Born to Lose, Live to Win" and created the template for speed metal died in his apartment, surrounded by the artifacts of a life lived without compromise or regret. On May 16, 2010, Ronnie James Dio died at 4 a.m. in a Houston hospital. The 67-year-old vocalist had been battling stomach cancer for 7 months. The disease had been discovered during a routine medical examination in November 2009. By the time doctors found it, the cancer had already spread beyond his stomach lining into surrounding tissues. Dio had immediately begun aggressive chemotherapy. For months, he maintained a public presence, posting updates on his website and expressing optimism about his treatment. He told fans he would beat the disease and return to touring. Behind the scenes, the reality was far grimmer. The chemotherapy was destroying his body. He lost over 40 pounds. His legendary voice, the powerful instrument that had defined heavy metal vocals for 3 decades, weakened significantly. By March 2010, he could barely speak above a whisper. In May, his medical team discovered the cancer had metastasized to his liver and lymph nodes. The disease was now terminal. Dio was admitted to the hospital for palliative care. His wife, Wendy, remained at his bedside constantly. In his final days, Dio drifted in and out of consciousness. The cancer had spread so extensively that his organs were failing. His liver could no longer process toxins. His kidneys shut down. Fluid accumulated in his abdomen, causing severe pain despite heavy medication. On May 16th, surrounded by his wife and close friends, Ronnie James Dio's heart stopped. The official cause of death was gastric cancer with complications including liver failure and sepsis. The man who had sung about rainbows, dragons, and holy divers, who had popularized the devil horn's hand gesture and influenced generations of metal vocalists, died from a disease that consumed him from the inside over 7 months of agony. On February 2, 1979, Sid Vicious woke up in his girlfriend, Michelle Robinson's apartment in Greenwich Village, New York. The 21-year-old bassist for the Sex Pistols had been released on bail just the previous day. He was awaiting trial for the murder of his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen, who had been found stabbed to death in their hotel room 4 months earlier. Sid claimed he couldn't remember what happened that night. Both he and Nancy had been heavily using heroin, and his memory of the stabbing was completely blank. Since Nancy's death, Sid had attempted suicide twice. He had been in and out of rehab, jail, and psychiatric observation. His mother, Anne Beverly, had flown from England to support him. She was staying in the apartment that night. To celebrate his release from jail, Sid attended a small party. He drank heavily and used heroin, breaking his bail conditions immediately. When he returned to the apartment around midnight, he was visibly intoxicated. His mother helped him to bed. Around 3 a.m., Anne Beverly prepared a dose of heroin for her son. The drug had been purchased earlier that evening. What neither of them knew was that Sid's tolerance had dropped significantly during his time in jail. The dose that would have been manageable weeks earlier was now potentially lethal. Sid injected the heroin and lay back on the bed. Within minutes, his breathing began to slow. The drug suppressed his respiratory system, reducing the automatic signals that tell the body to breathe. His mother, also under the influence of drugs, didn't notice the change. By 5 a.m., Sid Vicious had stopped breathing entirely. His heart continued beating for several more minutes as his brain was starved of oxygen. Then his cardiac system failed. Michelle Robinson discovered his body at 10 a.m. He was lying on his back, his skin pale and cold. Paramedics confirmed he had been dead for hours. The official cause of death was heroin overdose. The medical examiner determined the drug's purity was significantly higher than the diluted heroin commonly available on the streets, making the dose far more potent than Sid had anticipated. The bassist, who couldn't actually play bass, who had become the visual symbol of punk's self-destructive ethos, died at 21 from the same drug that had defined and destroyed his relationship with Nancy Spungen. On April 19, 2002, police entered an apartment in Seattle's University District. They were responding to a call from property managers who hadn't seen the tenant in weeks. The door was locked from the inside. When officers forced entry, they found a body on the couch. Layne Staley, the 34-year-old vocalist for Alice in Chains, had been dead for approximately 2 weeks. The apartment was dark, curtains drawn, and the air was thick with the smell of decomposition. Staley's body weighed 86 pounds. He had been 6 feet tall and once weighed over 180 pounds. Years of heroin and cocaine addiction had reduced him to a skeletal figure. The medical examiner found his arms covered in track marks, some infected, some scarred over from years of intravenous drug use. On the table beside the couch were drug paraphernalia, syringes, spoons, lighters, and residue from both heroin and cocaine. Staley had been injecting a speedball, a mixture of heroin and cocaine, a combination that had also killed John Belushi in River Phoenix. The toxicology report showed lethal levels of both drugs in his system. The exact date of death was determined to be April 5, 2002, exactly 8 years after Kurt Cobain's suicide. Staley had been found with his arms crossed over his chest, his body positioned as if he had simply laid down to sleep. The speedball had caused his heart to stop. The cocaine accelerated his heart rate while the heroin suppressed his respiratory system. The two drugs created a fatal contradiction that his body couldn't survive. For 2 weeks, Layne Staley's corpse had remained on that couch while the world outside continued. No one had checked on him. No one had noticed his absence. The man whose voice had defined the sound of grunge, who had sung about addiction and depression with devastating honesty, died alone in a dark apartment, killed by the drugs he had been warning about in his lyrics for over a decade.